As the next chapter begins, the scene opens with a peaceful morning view of Ku Ki's small traditional house, surrounded by bamboo leaves gently swaying in the breeze while the soft light of sunrise spreads across the courtyard. Ku Ki quietly returns home and pushes the door open. But as soon as he steps inside, his thoughts drift back to the past. He remembers the words his grandfather once told him while teaching him about craftsmanship and responsibility. His grandfather had explained that draining a pond to catch fish might give quick results today, but it would leave nothing for tomorrow. And burning an entire forest to hunt animals might bring immediate rewards, but the following year there would be no animals left to hunt. Through those simple examples, his grandfather was teaching him an important lesson. People should never only think about short-term benefits without considering the future. Standing there, Ku Ki softly murmurs, "Grandpa," as the memory lingers in his mind. Suddenly, he steps forward and accidentally stumbles, losing his balance for a moment. Just as he is about to fall, a strong arm catches him. Ku Ki gasps in surprise and looks up, only to find himself face to face with the mysterious blue-haired man from the night before. That chilling sensation instantly reminds Ku Ki of what the stranger had said earlier about being a blue sea snail spirit. In that moment, Ku Ki's mind flashes back to the earlier conversation with the craftswoman about sea snail shells being used in lacquer art. He remembers her suggestion that instead of worrying about the rare material, he could simply use the sea snail shell itself or mix artificial stones into the design. But now, looking at the blue-haired man standing right in front of him, Ku Ki's thoughts spiral in a completely different direction. He suddenly panics internally, thinking, "Wait, what am I even thinking?" Because if this mysterious person really is connected to that rare sea snail shell, then cutting the shell apart for materials would basically be like harming a living being. In his imagination, he even pictures a ridiculous scene of the blue-haired man being chopped into pieces like a broken doll, which makes him quickly shake his head to push the thought away. Trying to calm himself down, Ku Ki decides that instead of overthinking the situation, the simplest solution is to make this strange guest leave as soon as possible. At that exact moment, the blue-haired man suddenly says something very straightforward. He's hungry. Ku Ki freezes for a second, staring at him in disbelief while the strange man calmly repeats that he wants food. Realizing that arguing will only make things more complicated, Ku Ki sighs internally and thinks that the fastest way to solve this problem is to feed him and then figure out a way to send him away afterward. And so, while the morning sun continues shining over the quiet courtyard, Ku Ki finds himself dealing with a situation he never expected, living under the same roof with a mysterious blue-haired sea snail spirit who not only refuses to leave, but has now started asking for breakfast. As Ku Ki and the mysterious blue-haired man stand outside in the courtyard, their strange morning encounter suddenly attracts attention from a passing neighbor. An elderly woman walking by notices them and cheerfully calls out, recognizing Ku Ki immediately. With curiosity in her voice, she asks if the lacquerware he makes has already become famous internationally and jokes about whether he has started doing business with foreigners. Ku Ki immediately becomes nervous because the blue-haired man standing behind him looks extremely unusual, with his long hair, pointed ears, and elegant clothing that definitely does not resemble anything from their small town. Trying to avoid suspicion, Ku Ki quickly greets the elderly neighbor respectfully and attempts to explain that things are not what they seem. However, the curious grandmother continues examining the tall stranger and comments that although his clothing looks strange, he seems tall and handsome, asking what his name is. Before Ku Ki can stop him, the blue-haired man calmly opens his mouth and begins to say, "I am a sea snail," which instantly makes Ku Ki panic. Without wasting even a second, Ku Ki blurts out a completely random name, De Kwon, to interrupt him. Then he quickly bows slightly and tells the grandmother that the stranger's name is Deep Kwon. Hearing that name, the elderly woman laughs and repeats it, commenting that it sounds like a Chinese name and even joking that it feels a little old-fashioned. She happily nods and continues chatting for a moment, completely unaware that Ku Ki just invented the name on the spot to prevent the blue-haired man from revealing something unbelievable. After the short conversation, the grandmother kindly invites them to stop by her house later to pick up some sweet potatoes, explaining that she recently harvested many from her field and has more than enough to share. He politely thanks her while the blue-haired man silently observes the situation, his calm eyes watching everything with quiet curiosity. Once the grandmother finally leaves, Ki lets out a small sigh of relief. But the blue-haired stranger seems to repeat the name slowly, as if trying to understand it, murmuring Kwang while looking at Ki. He then remembers the strange situation he is still dealing with and decides he needs to send this mysterious guest away as quickly as possible. Since the man previously said he could return to his shell, Ki grabs a cloth bundle and places the glowing blue sea snail shell inside it before holding the bag out to him. In a serious tone, he tells the man that if he really cannot go back to his original form on his own, then he should at least take the shell and leave quickly. The blue-haired man silently reaches out to accept the bag, but the moment Ki releases it, the bundle suddenly slips right through his hands as if there is no weight at all. Both of them freeze in surprise. Ki quickly lunges forward to grab the falling bag while the blue-haired man looks down at his hands in confusion, clearly not understanding why the object passed straight through his grasp. The comedic moment makes the situation even more ridiculous. Ki scrambling to catch the bag, while the elegant sea snail spirit simply stands there with a puzzled expression, making it obvious that sending this mysterious guest away might not be as simple as Ki hoped. Ki barely manages to catch the cloth bundle containing the glowing sea snail shell before it hits the ground, and he lets out a small sigh of relief, thinking that it would have been such a waste if something that rare and beautiful had been damaged. Still confused, he looks back at the mysterious blue-haired man and wonders why the man cannot even touch what should be his own true form. The strange situation leaves Ki scratching his head, but eventually he decides that there is only one thing he can do for now, since the man clearly cannot return to his shell and also cannot carry it normally. Ki grabs a black hoodie and puts it on the blue-haired stranger, hiding his unusual appearance and especially his pointed ears so people won't stare or become suspicious. Then he ties the cloth bundle containing the shell securely onto the man's back so he can carry it like a backpack. He also prepares some small dried fish for him to take along as food for the journey, explaining that he noticed earlier that the man didn't seem to like bread very much. While handing him the food, Ki seriously warns him not to reveal his true identity to strangers again, reminding him that the human world can be dangerous and that if the wrong people discover what he is, he could easily get into trouble. Ki even pulls the hood lower over the man's head, making sure his ears are fully hidden. After that, he gives clear directions. Once he leaves the gate, he should walk straight ahead where there is a police station nearby. And beyond that road, there is a muddy shoreline that connects directly to the sea. If he follows that path, he should eventually be able to return to the ocean where he belongs. With everything prepared, Ki firmly pushes him out the door and tells him one last time to be careful before quickly shutting the gate behind him with a loud slam. Finally alone, Ki leans against the door and exhales deeply, muttering that he is completely exhausted, but at least things have finally returned to peace. Originally, he had even planned to take the mysterious man to the aquatic management office later that morning to figure out what to do. But now that the stranger has left, he believes that the problem has solved itself. In his mind, he reasons that since the man already possesses spiritual awareness, he should be able to decide his own path and return home on his own. However, just as Ki begins walking away, something strange suddenly catches his attention. From the corner of his eye, he notices a tiny floating version of the blue-haired man hovering beside him like a small spirit. Startled and confused, Ki turns his head slightly, wondering if he is imagining things and nervously thinking, wait, that guy looks just like him, but there's no way that could actually be happening, right? The moment leaves Ki uneasy, hinting that even though he believes he has already sent the mysterious sea snail spirit away, their strange connection might not be over yet. Back inside his quiet house, Ki finally changes into more comfortable clothes and drops onto his bed, clearly exhausted after everything that happened earlier. As he sits there rubbing his head, he complains softly that his head hurts and he feels dizzy, the fatigue from constant work and stress catching up with him. He reminds himself that he only has a short time to rest because later he still has an elective class to attend, and after that he must go straight to work again to keep up with the production schedule. Lying flat on the bed and staring at the ceiling, Ki sighs and admits that this entire month he hasn't had a single night of proper sleep. The pressure of balancing school, work, and the complicated lacquer craftsmanship he inherited from his grandfather is slowly draining him. The narration then reflects an important thought. When there isn't enough time, the things you create will inevitably become rough and imperfect. As Ki drifts between exhaustion and sleep, a strange sensation suddenly appears in his half-conscious state. In what feels like a dream, he senses someone touching him gently. Instead of feeling uncomfortable, Ki feels an unusual sense of calm spreading through his body. Confused, he wonders whether it's just a dream or something else entirely. But the more he thinks about it, the more he realizes something odd. After that mysterious touch, his body actually feels much more relaxed and comfortable, almost as if the pain and irritation in his skin have temporarily eased. Eventually, the moment fades, and Ki slowly wakes up again in his room, sunlight filtering softly through the open window and leaves swaying outside in the morning breeze, shaking off the strange experience. He walks over to the refrigerator to look for something to eat, only to realize that it's almost completely empty. After staring at the nearly bare shelves for a moment, he suddenly remembers that earlier he packed up all the remaining food and gave it to the mysterious blue-haired stranger before sending him away. Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, Ki sighs and decides he'll have to go out and buy more food later. With that thought in mind, he grabs his jacket and heads toward the front door, ready to step outside and continue his busy day. But just as he slides the door open and peeks out, something unexpected stops him in his tracks. Sitting quietly on the steps outside his house is the very same blue-haired man he thought had already left, still wearing the hoodie Ki gave him and carrying the cloth bundle with the shell on his back. The man sits there silently while two curious cats wander around nearby, nibbling on small dried fish scattered on the ground. For a moment, Ki simply stands there staring in disbelief, realizing that the strange sea snail spirit he tried so hard to send away never actually left at all. As Ki opens the door and sees the blue-haired stranger still sitting outside, he freezes in disbelief. The mysterious man looks exhausted, sweat running down his face as if he has been waiting there for quite a while. Ki hesitates for a moment and awkwardly calls out to him, unsure what to even say in this strange situation. The blue-haired man slowly lifts his head and looks back at him with a calm but slightly tired expression, quietly commenting that Ki seems rather weak. For a brief moment, neither of them speaks, creating an awkward silence between them. Realizing that leaving the man outside like this might not be a good idea, Ki finally sighs and tells him to come inside first. In a small comedic moment, the scene briefly switches to a cute, exaggerated version where the blue-haired man is happily sitting on the ground, surrounded by curious cats, feeding them the dried fish Ki gave him earlier while sparkling little stars float around him. It makes the moment feel surprisingly peaceful despite how strange the situation is. But once inside the house, Ki suddenly remembers something important about sea snails. In nature, sea snails cannot stay away from water for too long because they will slowly dry out and die. Thinking about this, he immediately starts worrying that the mysterious man might actually be in danger. The scene then shows the glowing blue shell resting in water, with fish swimming around it, reminding viewers of the ocean environment where the creature originally belonged. Ki studies the man carefully and notices that he actually looks a bit better now, almost as if he has recovered slightly. However, this only creates more confusion in Ki's mind because the water in his house is just ordinary fresh water, not sea water like the ocean. If this man is really a sea snail spirit, then why does he seem fine? Meanwhile, the blue-haired man casually picks up a bottle of orange soda he found and examines it with curiosity before opening it and drinking it as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Watching this, He becomes even more confused and begins thinking through the situation logically. If the man truly is a sea snail that transformed into a human spirit, then the room around them is filled with decorative lacquer crafts made from sea snail shells. From that perspective, the blue-haired man might actually be sitting among items created from the remains of his own kind. Ki awkwardly mutters that the whole situation is extremely strange. The blue-haired man, however, calmly continues drinking the soda while looking completely unconcerned. In Ki's mind, another thought suddenly appears. If this man really is a sea snail spirit, then from his point of view, all the beautiful lacquer artworks in this room might actually be objects made from the shells of his fellow sea snails. Realizing this possibility makes the situation feel even more bizarre, leaving Ki standing there with a mixture of confusion, guilt, and disbelief as he tries to understand what kind of unusual being he has accidentally brought into his home. As Ki watches the mysterious, blue-haired man casually sitting in his home and drinking soda, a terrifying thought suddenly flashes through his mind. He imagines what might happen if the man realizes that many of the beautiful lacquer artworks in the room are decorated with sea snail shells. In Ki's imagination, the calm stranger instantly transforms into a terrifying sea creature, surrounded by swirling energy and roaring in anger, as if he has discovered that humans have been turning the shells of his own kind into decorations. The thought alone makes Ki panic. He quickly snaps back to reality and nervously tells himself that he has to clean up the room. Immediately before the blue-haired man notices anything suspicious. Meanwhile, the mysterious guest simply sits there calmly at the small table, slowly drinking from the orange soda bottle and watching Ki with mild curiosity. Acting quickly, Ki grabs one of the lacquer vases, decorated with delicate shell inlays, and carefully moves it away, hoping to hide all the shell artworks before the man can ask questions. However, as Ki rushes around collecting the items, the blue-haired man suddenly lifts his hand and flicks one of the objects away with effortless strength, sending it flying across the room and crashing loudly against the door. The unexpected sound echoes through the house as the door slams shut from the impact. The blue-haired man turns his head slightly, looking confused about why Ki is behaving so strangely. Outside, the quiet courtyard of the house appears peaceful, with trees swaying gently in the wind, creating a sharp contrast with Ki's rising stress inside. Exhausted from rushing around and worrying, Ki eventually kneels down in the middle of the workshop, breathing heavily as tiny pieces of lacquer dust float through the air around him. He rubs his forehead and mutters to himself that he must be overthinking things and that his imagination is probably running too wild. But as he lowers his hand, he notices something alarming. The allergic reaction on his skin has started to flare up again. Red, irritated marks spread across his hands and neck, reminding him of the painful sensitivity he has always had to natural lacquer. Looking at the irritated skin, Ki sighs quietly and tells himself that later he will have to apply medicine again to calm the reaction. The moment also brings back a painful memory from the past. In his mind, he hears the stern voice of an older mentor who once warned him that if he truly cannot touch lacquer without harming his body, then he should stop working with lacquer art completely. Those harsh words echo in Ki's memory, reminding him of the difficult choice he has been avoiding for so long, whether to continue pursuing the craft he inherited from his grandfather, even though his own body seems unable to endure it. While trying to calm himself down inside the workshop, Ki suddenly notices a thick blue book slipping off a nearby shelf and falling to the floor with a soft thud. Curious, he pauses and picks it up, squinting at the cover with confusion. It looks like an old book that his grandfather must have kept hidden away for years. As he flips it open, he reads the title and realizes it's something about sea snails and ancient legends. Ki frowns slightly, muttering to himself that he has never seen this book before, even though it was stored in the house all along. Kneeling on the floor with sunlight shining through the wooden windows, he slowly begins reading the strange pages. Inside, the illustrations tell an old folktale about a lonely fisherman who once lived on a remote island. According to the story, the fisherman was sickly since childhood, with a weak body that constantly suffered from strange skin irritations and painful itching that never seemed to go away. Because of his condition, the people in his village avoided him and rarely spoke to him, leaving him to live quietly by himself near the sea. One day, while fishing, he discovered a beautiful sea snail unlike anything he had ever seen before. The fisherman brought the creature home, without knowing that it was something far more unusual than an ordinary shell from the ocean. As Ku-ki reads further, the story reveals that the fisherman was preparing to cook the sea snail like any normal seafood, completely unaware of what it truly was. But before anything happened, something incredible occurred. During the night, under the glow of the moon, the sea snail suddenly transformed into a mysterious woman with extraordinary beauty. She appeared quietly beside the fisherman and revealed that she was not a normal sea creature at all, but a spirit that had taken human form. The woman explained that the fisherman's illness came from a rare condition, affecting his skin and body, but she also hinted that it could be eased if their lives became connected in a special way. The ancient story goes on to describe how the fisherman and the mysterious woman eventually grew close, and through their connection, his painful symptoms gradually began to fade while the spirit slowly adapted to living in the human world. However, as Ku-ki continues reading, his expression becomes increasingly awkward. The way the story describes their relationship and the strange method of curing the illness sounds oddly dramatic and exaggerated, almost like an over-the-top romantic legend rather than a serious historical record. Feeling embarrassed, Ku-ki quickly snaps the book shut with a loud clap and rubs the back of his neck. With a frustrated sigh, he mutters that the title must have been misleading and that this feels more like some bizarre adult romance story, disguised as folklore. Still sitting on the floor with the old book in his hands, Ku-ki can't help but wonder why his strict and traditional grandfather would hide something like this among his research materials, leaving him even more confused about the strange connection between sea snails, spirits, and the mysterious blue-haired man who suddenly appeared in his life. As Ku-ki continues reading the strange old book, he suddenly notices a section explaining that sea snails were once considered valuable medicinal ingredients in traditional medicine. The text describes how they were believed to help cool the body, reduce inflammation, and even treat certain skin conditions. Some passages explain that parts of the sea snail could be used to soothe sore throats, reduce swelling, and help wounds stop bleeding. Seeing this information surprises Ku-ki, and he quietly mutters to himself that he never expected sea snails to have such high medicinal value. Standing outside in the courtyard, he starts thinking about the mysterious blue-haired man currently staying in his house. The coincidence begins to bother him. After all, the stranger also claims to be connected to the sea, and the book keeps mentioning sea snails again and again. For a brief moment, a ridiculous thought crosses Ku-ki's mind. What if the legend in the book somehow has something to do with the strange guest inside his home? But almost immediately he shakes his head and scolds himself, thinking that he must be overthinking things. He even tells himself that the story in the book might just be an exaggerated folktale, and there's no way his situation would end up like the strange romance described in those pages. Feeling embarrassed by his own thoughts, Ku-ki quickly tries to convince himself that he definitely hasn't fallen so low that he would start believing he needs some supernatural partner to fix his problems. Still slightly flustered, he decides to stop thinking about it and heads back toward the house. But as he reaches the door and pushes it open, something unexpected happens. Soft bubbles suddenly float through the air, drifting slowly across the room as if something magical has just taken place. Ku-ki freezes in confusion and looks around, trying to understand what he's seeing. Then he steps inside and his eyes widen instantly. Standing right in front of him is the mysterious blue-haired man, but this time, something is very different. The man is tall, muscular, and completely soaked as if he just came out of water, with long blue hair flowing down his back and pointed ears that give him an otherworldly appearance. Ku-ki's brain immediately short-circuits at the shocking sight, and the first thing he blurts out in panic is asking where the man's clothes went. The blue-haired stranger, however, seems completely calm. In a slightly annoyed voice, he simply says that the clothes felt uncomfortable and irritating, so he tore them apart. A quick flashback shows the moment the fabric ripped apart, proving he wasn't exaggerating at all. Hearing this, Kuki nearly loses his mind. He shouts that even if the clothes were cheap polyester, there was absolutely no reason to destroy them like that. Completely flustered and unable to look directly at the stranger, Kuki covers his face with one hand while his cheeks turn bright red. Embarrassed and overwhelmed by the absurd situation, he quickly decides that there is only one solution to this chaos. Without wasting another second, Kuki tells himself that he absolutely needs to get this mysterious man out of the house immediately before things become even more awkward or complicated than they already are. Still completely flustered by the awkward situation, Kuki quickly throws a set of clothes toward the blue-haired stranger and urgently tells him to put them on immediately, warning him not to tear these ones apart like the last pair. Turning his back out of embarrassment, Kuki crosses his arms and mutters that he'll never offer the guy soda again after this chaos. While the mysterious man begins putting on the clothes behind him, Kuki's mind starts racing with practical worries. He begins thinking that maybe the best solution is to personally take this strange guest to some kind of marine conservation office or research center near the coast, since the man seems connected to the ocean in some way. But then another problem appears. In his mind, how on earth would he even explain this situation to the staff? If he walked in claiming that a sea creature had turned into a human, they would definitely think he was crazy. Frustrated, he glances down at his phone, but even trying to search for answers online feels useless, and the thought of explaining everything over the phone sounds even more ridiculous. At the same time, he remembers that the stranger's real body, whatever that actually is, was left in the water tank earlier for safety, because if it stayed out too long it might dry out. While Kuki is lost in thought, he suddenly realizes the room has gone completely quiet. Nervously, he turns around and asks if the man has finished getting dressed, wondering why there hasn't been any movement. What he sees next makes his brain freeze again. In a comedic moment shown in a chibi-style reaction, the blue-haired man has somehow put the clothes on completely wrong. Looking totally confused about how human clothing works, Kuki stares at him in disbelief and blurts out whether the guy actually knows what he's doing, pointing out that the hoodie and even the pants are worn incorrectly. Realizing this situation might take longer than expected, Kuki sighs and decides he'll have to help directly. He calmly tells the blue-haired man to sit down and raise his arms so he can fix the clothing properly. As Kuki steps closer and begins adjusting the shirt, his hand briefly brushes against the man's arm.at. That moment, Kuki's thoughts flash back to the strange legend from the book he had just read, the story about a sea snail transforming into a human, standing face to face with the tall blue-haired stranger now wearing human clothes. Kuki can't help thinking that this situation feels eerily similar to that old folktale, except there's one detail the story didn't prepare him for. In the legend, the sea snail transformed into a beautiful woman, but in front of him now stands a very tall, very handsome man instead. Trying to stay calm, Kuki focuses on pulling the shirt down properly over the man's torso. But as he adjusts the fabric, he notices something unexpected. The stranger's long blue hair is incredibly smooth, almost like silk, and even softer than it looks. For a brief moment, the blue-haired man simply stands there quietly, watching Kuki with a calm expression as Kuki helps the mysterious blue-haired man put on his clothes. He suddenly notices something unusual about him. While adjusting the shirt, Kuki accidentally brushes his hand against the man's side and immediately realizes that the man's skin feels extremely cool to the touch, almost like it carries the chill of the ocean itself. The strange sensation makes Kuki pause for a moment, wondering how someone's body could feel so cold. But before he can think any further, the blue-haired man unexpectedly grabs Kuki's hand and pulls it closer against his body, as if testing the warmth of Kuki's skin. Kuki is instantly startled by the sudden action and nervously blurts out, asking what exactly the man thinks he's doing. The distance between them suddenly becomes very small, their faces only inches apart. and the moment feels awkward and tense. However, instead of reacting aggressively, the blue-haired man simply looks at Ku-ki with calm curiosity, as if he's discovering something new about the warmth of a human body. After a brief moment, he quietly comments that Ku-ki feels very warm, almost fascinated by the difference between them. Ku-ki, on the other hand, is completely flustered by the situation, unsure how things suddenly turned so strange while he was just trying to help the man get dressed.